In a dimly lit laboratory on the outskirts of Manhattan, blue sparks danced through the air like frozen lightning. The man who created them believed he could power the entire planet for free. His name was written in notebooks that would later vanish. His patents were filed, then buried, and his vision of a wireless world was silenced before it could begin. Welcome to Hidden Index, where the past reveals what the present chose to forget. Nikola Tesla arrived in New York City in June of 1884 with 4 cents in his pocket, a book of poetry, and calculations for a flying machine. He carried a letter of introduction addressed to Thomas Edison. The letter reportedly read, "I know 2 great men, and you are one of them. The other is this young man." Tesla was 28 years old. He spoke 8 languages, and he could visualize entire machines in his mind down to the measurements without ever drawing them on paper. Edison hired him almost immediately. The work was brutal. Tesla was tasked with improving Edison's direct current generators, which were inefficient and prone to failure. Edison promised him $50,000 if he succeeded. Tesla worked through the night month after month, redesigning nearly the entire system. When he finished, the generators worked better than Edison had imagined. Tesla asked for his payment. Edison laughed and told him it had been a joke. "Tesla, you don't understand our American humor," he said. Tesla resigned the next day. That moment was not just the end of a job, it was the beginning of a war that would define the future of electricity itself. Tesla believed in alternating current. Edison had built his empire on direct current. Direct current could only travel short distances before losing power. It required power stations every few miles, all of them owned and controlled by Edison's company. Alternating current could travel hundreds of miles with minimal loss. It was cheaper, it was scalable, and it threatened everything Edison had built. Edison launched a campaign to destroy alternating current before it could spread. He began electrocuting animals in public demonstrations, using alternating current to kill dogs, horses, and even an elephant named Topsy in 1903. He paid schoolchildren to collect stray animals so he could electrocute them in front of crowds. He lobbied states to use alternating current in the newly invented electric chair, hoping the public would associate it with death. The press called it the War of Currents, but it was not a war of ideas. It was a war of money, reputation, and control. Tesla partnered with George Westinghouse, an industrialist who believed in alternating current and had the resources to fight Edison. Together, they won the contract to light the 1893 World's Columbian Exposition in Chicago. It was the first all-electric fair in history. 200,000 light bulbs illuminated the night. 27 million people attended. They saw fountains lit from below, electric streetcars, and the first glimpse of a future powered by Tesla's system. Edison's direct current could never have done it. The world took notice. But Westinghouse was bleeding money. The cost of fighting Edison, combined with the financial panic of 1893, nearly destroyed him. He went to Tesla and told him the truth. He could not afford to pay the royalties they had agreed upon. If Tesla insisted on collecting, Westinghouse would go bankrupt and alternating current would die with him. Tesla tore up the contract. He walked away from millions of dollars in royalties that would have made him one of the wealthiest men in history. He did it to save the technology, not himself. By 1900, alternating current had won. It powered cities across America. Tesla's name was in the newspapers. He was celebrated, photographed, admired. He dined with Mark Twain and Rudyard Kipling. He gave demonstrations where he sent electricity through his own body to light bulbs in his hands unharmed. He was called the wizard of the modern age, but Tesla was already moving toward something far more dangerous. He had begun experimenting with wireless transmission of energy. In 1899, Tesla moved to Colorado Springs to build a laboratory far from the interference of city life. He constructed a massive coil that could generate millions of volts of electricity. His goal was to prove that electrical energy could be transmitted through the Earth itself, without wires, across any distance. On one night in July, he sent a pulse of energy into the ground so powerful that it knocked out the dynamo at the Colorado Springs Electric Company and plunged the city into darkness. Tesla had created artificial lightning over 100 feet long. He recorded the experiment in his journal with a single sentence: "I have harnessed the cosmic rays and caused them to operate a motive device." But the experiment revealed something else. Tesla observed rhythmic electrical signals coming from the Earth, patterns that repeated in a way that seemed deliberate. He believed he had intercepted communications from another planet, possibly Mars. The press mocked him. Scientists dismissed him, but Tesla remained convinced that he had detected something beyond human origin. Whether he was right or delusional, the damage to his reputation had begun. Tesla returned to New York with a vision that terrified the most powerful men in America. He wanted to build a tower that could transmit electrical power wirelessly to any point on the globe. No power lines, no meters. No way to control who used it or charge them for it. He called it the Wardenclyffe Tower. He needed funding, and for that he turned to John Pierpont Morgan. Morgan was the most powerful banker in the world. He had financed railroads, steel empires, and General Electric, which had absorbed Edison's company. He controlled the flow of money in America. If Morgan wanted something to succeed, it succeeded. If he wanted it to fail, it disappeared. Tesla presented his idea with confidence. He told Morgan the tower would provide free energy to the entire world. Morgan agreed to invest $150,000. Construction began in 1901 on Long Island, but Tesla made a mistake. He told Morgan the truth. During construction, Guglielmo Marconi successfully transmitted a radio signal across the Atlantic Ocean. Marconi's system used 17 of Tesla's patents, but Marconi had powerful financial backers, including Andrew Carnegie. The press celebrated Marconi as the inventor of radio. Morgan saw an opportunity. He asked Tesla if Wardenclyffe could transmit messages like Marconi's system. Tesla said yes, but that was not its purpose. Its purpose was to transmit power, free power, to everyone. Morgan stopped returning Tesla's letters. Tesla wrote to him again and again, explaining that the tower was nearly complete, that it would revolutionize communication and energy, that it would make Morgan even wealthier. Morgan did not reply. Without additional funding, construction halted. Workers abandoned the site. The tower stood incomplete, rusting in the salt air. Tesla had spent everything he had. He was forced to sell his other patents just to pay his debts. In 1905, Morgan sent Tesla a final letter. It was brief. "I have received your letter, and in reply would say that I should not feel disposed at present to make any further advances." That was all. No explanation. No negotiation, just a door closing. Some historians believe Morgan realized that free wireless energy would destroy the infrastructure he had spent decades building. Power companies, copper mines, electrical grids. All of it depended on the ability to control and monetize energy. If Tesla succeeded, that control would vanish. Others believe Morgan simply saw Wardenclyffe as a financial risk with no clear profit model. Either way, the result was the same. The tower was never completed. In 1917, during World War I, the United States government ordered it demolished, claiming it could be used by German spies as a landmark for navigation. Dynamite was used, the tower fell, the dream ended. Tesla spent the next 3 decades living in hotels, moving when he could not pay the rent. He fed pigeons in Central Park. He claimed to have invented a particle beam weapon capable of destroying 10,000 airplanes at a distance of 250 miles. He called it a peace beam, though others called it a death ray. He offered it to the United States War Department. They declined. He offered it to the Soviet Union, Yugoslavia, and the United Kingdom. Some countries expressed interest but never followed through. No contracts were signed. No blueprints were purchased. Tesla died alone in room 3307 of the New Yorker Hotel on January 7, 1943. He was 86 years old. Within hours of his death, agents from the Federal Bureau of Investigation entered his room. They seized all of his belongings, documents, notebooks, personal effects, everything. The official reason given was national security. Tesla had been working on directed energy weapons and other technologies that could be valuable in wartime. The United States was deep into World War II. Anything Tesla had designed could not be allowed to fall into enemy hands. But there was a problem. Tesla's nephew, Sava Kasanovic, who was also the Yugoslav ambassador to the United States, protested. He argued that Tesla's estate belonged to his family, not the American government. The case went to the Office of Alien Property, which determined that since Tesla had never become a United States citizen, his property could be seized as belonging to a foreign national. It was a legal maneuver. The belongings remained in government possession. The Federal Bureau of Investigation then asked Dr. John G. Trump, an electrical engineer and professor at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, to examine Tesla's papers and determine if any posed a security risk. Trump reviewed the materials and concluded in a written report that Tesla's efforts had been primarily speculative, philosophical, and promotional, and did not contain any workable designs or scientific breakthroughs. The papers were eventually returned to Tesla's family, and most were later shipped to the Tesla Museum in Belgrade, but not all of them. Files from that period remain classified. In 1978, the Freedom of Information Act forced the Federal Bureau of Investigation to release some documents related to Tesla. The file was over 200 pages long. Large sections were redacted. Some pages were missing entirely. References were made to experiments Tesla conducted in the final years of his life, but the details of those experiments were blacked out. To this day, no one knows what was in those sections or why they remain hidden. Tesla held over 300 patents across multiple countries. Many of them were revolutionary: the alternating current motor, the Tesla coil, radio transmission, remote control, fluorescent lighting, bladeless turbines. Yet in the decades following his death, his name was rarely mentioned in textbooks. When the history of electricity was taught, students learned about Edison, Marconi, and Westinghouse. Tesla was often reduced to a footnote if he appeared at all. It was not an accident. After Tesla's death, many of his patents were quietly absorbed by major corporations. General Electric, Westinghouse Electric, and others held the rights to technologies Tesla had invented but could no longer defend. These companies had no incentive to promote Tesla's name. To do so would mean acknowledging that many of their most profitable products originated with a man who had been dismissed, underfunded, and sidelined. It was cleaner to let him fade into obscurity. In 1960, the General Conference on Weights and Measures officially named the unit of magnetic flux density the Tesla. It was a gesture of recognition, decades too late. By then, most people had no idea who he was. There were others who remembered: engineers, physicists, inventors who had studied his work and understood what he had accomplished, but they were voices in specialized circles, not in classrooms or museums. The narrative of American innovation had been written, and Tesla's role in it had been carefully minimized. It was not until the 1980s and 90s, with the rise of the internet and independent researchers, that Tesla's story began to resurface. Declassified documents, old patents, and forgotten interviews were shared and analyzed. People began to ask questions. Why had his work been seized? Why had so many of his ideas never been developed? Why had a man who changed the world been erased from it? Some of the answers were economic. Tesla's vision of free, wireless energy directly threatened the business model of every power company in existence. Electricity was profitable because it could be metered, controlled, and sold. If Tesla had succeeded in transmitting power through the air or the earth, that system would have collapsed. Investors like Morgan understood this. They did not fund revolutions that would destroy their empires. Other answers were political. Tesla's later work on directed energy weapons and wireless communication had military implications. Governments wanted that research, but they wanted it quietly. They did not want a public inventor with no allegiance to any nation holding the blueprints for weapons that could change the balance of power. It was easier to take the work and bury the man, and some of the answers were personal. Tesla was difficult. He was obsessive. He refused to compromise. He tore up contracts that would have made him wealthy because he valued the idea more than the money. He alienated investors. He gave interviews where he made claims that sounded impossible, even absurd. He said he could split the Earth in half with resonant vibrations. He said he received signals from Mars. True or not, it made him easy to dismiss, and dismissal over time became erasure. But the inventions remained. They were built into the infrastructure of the modern world, often without credit. Every electric motor, every radio, every remote control, every wireless device. They all traced their lineage in part back to patents Tesla filed over a century ago. The world runs on his ideas, it just forgot his name. In 1943, when Tesla died, the world was at war. His death was barely reported. No state funeral, no presidential acknowledgement, just a small obituary in the back pages of newspapers. The man who had lit the world's fare, who had dreamed of powering the planet, who had held the future in his hands, died in debt and alone. Years later, the Federal Bureau of Investigation files on Tesla's work were finally declassified. But not everything was there. Pages were missing, diagrams were redacted, references were incomplete. What happened to those documents? Who decided what the public could and could not see? The answers were never given. Yet even as Tesla faded from memory, his influence spread in ways no one could have predicted. The alternating current system he championed became the global standard. Every power plant, every transmission line, every electrical outlet in homes across the world operated on principles Tesla had proven in the late 1800s. The system Edison had fought so hard to protect was abandoned entirely. Direct current became a footnote. Alternating current became civilization, but it was not just power distribution. Tesla's work on high-frequency alternating current led directly to the development of radio technology. In 1943, just months after Tesla's death, the Supreme Court of the United States ruled that Marconi's radio patents were invalid because they relied on prior work by Tesla and others. The decision came too late for Tesla to see it. Marconi had been celebrated as the father of radio for decades. He had won the Nobel Prize in Physics in 1909. Tesla had received nothing. The Supreme Court ruling was buried in wartime news. Few people noticed. Marconi's name remained in the textbooks. Tesla's did not. The pattern repeated itself across multiple technologies. Tesla had demonstrated the first remote-controlled boat in 1898 at Madison Square Garden. He called it a teleautomaton. The audience thought it was magic. Some thought he was controlling it with his mind. Others believed there was a trained monkey inside. No one understood that Tesla had invented radio control, a technology that would later be used in everything from garage door openers to military drones. He filed patents. He gave demonstrations, but the technology was too far ahead of its time. Investors could not see a practical use for it. The patents expired. Others later developed similar systems and took the credit. Tesla also invented the first bladeless turbine, a device that used smooth disks instead of blades to generate power. It was far more efficient than conventional turbines and could run on a variety of fuels. He demonstrated working prototypes. He filed patents, but no company was willing to invest in manufacturing it. The existing turbine industry was too entrenched. The bladeless turbine was shelved. Decades later, engineers would rediscover the design and realize how revolutionary it was. But by then, Tesla's name was not attached to it. He developed the Tesla coil, which produced high-voltage, low-current electricity at high frequencies. It was not just a scientific curiosity. It became the foundation for wireless communication, radio, television, and even modern medical equipment like magnetic resonance imaging machines. Yet when people saw a Tesla coil in a museum or science exhibit, they rarely knew who Tesla was or why his invention mattered. There were other projects too, ideas that never left the drawing board. Tesla claimed he had developed a system for transmitting images wirelessly, a precursor to television, years before anyone else. He spoke of a world system that would allow instant communication across the globe, combining wireless telephony, data transmission, and broadcasting. He described it in detailed articles and gave interviews about it, but without funding, none of it could be built, and without prototypes, no one believed it was possible. In 1934, Tesla gave an interview to a reporter from the New York Times. He was 78 years old and living in a hotel room he could barely afford. The reporter asked him what he was working on. Tesla described a particle beam weapon that could destroy entire armies from hundreds of miles away. He said it could shoot down 10,000 enemy planes. He called it a teleforce weapon. The press called it a death ray. Tesla insisted it was not a ray at all, but a stream of concentrated particles traveling at tremendous speed. He said he had developed the blueprints and was willing to sell them to any government that wanted to ensure peace through superior defense. The United States War Department declined to meet with him. They sent a polite letter thanking him for his offer but stating they had no interest. Tesla then reached out to the governments of the United Kingdom, the Soviet Union, and Yugoslavia. The Soviet Union expressed mild interest and allegedly paid him a small sum for a technical paper describing the weapon's principles. But no contracts were signed. No weapons were built. After Tesla's death, the Federal Bureau of Investigation searched his belongings for any documentation related to the particle beam weapon. They found notes, but nothing detailed enough to reconstruct the device. The notes were classified. Some researchers have speculated that elements of Tesla's directed energy research may have influenced later military projects. The development of radar, particle accelerators, directed energy weapons programs that were explored during the Cold War, but the connections are circumstantial. The classified portions of Tesla's files make it impossible to know for certain what was taken, what was studied, and what was dismissed as unworkable. What is known is that the United States government took his work seriously enough to seize it immediately after his death and keep portions of it classified for decades. If the work was truly speculative and without merit, as Dr. John G. Trump's report claimed, why was it necessary to classify it at all? Tesla had predicted the modern smartphone decades before it existed. In 1926, he gave an interview to Collier's magazine in which he described a future device that would fit in a pocket and allow people to communicate instantly across vast distances, transmit images, watch live events, and access information from anywhere in the world. He said it would be as simple to use as a pocket watch. The interviewer was skeptical. Tesla insisted it would happen within a generation. He was off by about 50 years, but the vision was accurate. He also spoke of harnessing energy from the environment itself. He believed that the Earth's ionosphere could be used as a natural capacitor, storing and releasing electrical energy that could be tapped anywhere on the planet. He conducted experiments attempting to prove this. He measured resonant frequencies in the Earth. He theorized that with the right equipment, it would be possible to draw power from the atmosphere without any fuel source. Modern scientists debate whether this is theoretically possible. Tesla believed it was not only possible but inevitable, but none of these ideas attracted funding. Investors wanted proven technologies with clear profit models. Tesla offered visions that seemed impossible and business plans that undermined existing industries. He alienated the very people who could have supported him, and as his financial situation worsened, his public image shifted from visionary inventor to eccentric recluse. He developed obsessive-compulsive behaviors. He refused to shake hands because of a fear of germs. He insisted on eating meals alone and required that his napkins be perfectly folded. He lived in hotel rooms because he could not afford permanent housing. He moved frequently when he could not pay his bills. The Waldorf Astoria, the St. Regis, the Governor Clinton, the New Yorker. Each time the hotel management eventually asked him to leave, Tesla formed a deep attachment to pigeons. He fed them every day in Central Park and in Bryant Park. He spent money he did not have on birdseed. He cared for injured pigeons in his hotel room, nursing them back to health. He spoke of one white pigeon in particular, a female with gray-tipped wings whom he described as the love of his life. When she died, Tesla said that something inside him died as well. He claimed that as she was dying, a brilliant light shone from her eyes, brighter than any light he had ever produced in his laboratory. It was the kind of statement that made people dismiss him as unwell. But even in his final years, Tesla continued working. He filed his last patent in 1928 for a vertical takeoff and landing aircraft, decades before helicopters became practical. He corresponded with scientists and engineers. He wrote articles for technical journals. He gave interviews. He never stopped thinking about energy, communication, and the future of technology. On the night of January 7, 1943, a maid at the New Yorker hotel found Tesla dead in his bed. The medical examiner determined that he had died of coronary thrombosis. There was no autopsy. His body was taken to a funeral home. Within hours, government agents arrived at the hotel. They sealed his room. They removed everything inside: documents, diagrams, notebooks, personal letters. Hotel staff were instructed not to speak to anyone about what had been taken. The Federal Bureau of Investigation later claimed that the materials posed a potential security risk and needed to be evaluated before being released to Tesla's family. Dr. John G. Trump was brought in to conduct the evaluation. His report stated that nothing of significant value had been found. The materials were eventually returned to Tesla's nephew, who shipped most of them to Belgrade, where they remain in the Tesla Museum. But researchers who have studied the materials note that there are gaps, references to experiments that are not included, mentions of prototypes that were never found, diagrams that were described in letters but are absent from the archive. In 1952, the Federal Bureau of Investigation officially closed its file on Nikola Tesla. The case was marked as resolved, but when the file was declassified in 1978 under the Freedom of Information Act, over 60 pages were missing. The documents that were released contained heavy redactions. Entire paragraphs were blacked out. Some pages had only a sentence or two visible. The reason given for the redactions was national security. National security in 1978, 35 years after Tesla's death. What could Tesla have been working on in 1943 that still required secrecy decades later? Some researchers believe that Tesla's work on resonant frequencies and wireless energy transmission had applications that were never publicly disclosed. The ability to transmit energy through the Earth could theoretically be weaponized. A targeted pulse of energy could disable electrical systems, disrupt communications, or even trigger seismic activity if tuned to the Earth's natural resonant frequency. Tesla himself had warned that his oscillator, if used improperly, could cause catastrophic destruction. He claimed he once accidentally created a small earthquake in Manhattan while testing a mechanical oscillator in his laboratory. The police were called. Tesla destroyed the device with a hammer before they arrived. Whether the story was true or exaggerated, it reflected Tesla's understanding that resonance could be dangerous. A small amount of energy applied at the correct frequency could produce massive effects. The same principle that allows a singer to shatter a glass with their voice could, in theory, be scaled up to affect much larger structures, bridges, buildings. Geological formations. Military researchers during the Cold War explored the concept of earthquake weapons, devices that could trigger tectonic shifts in enemy territory. Directed energy systems that could disrupt electronics from a distance. Some of these programs were eventually declassified, others remain classified. Whether any of them drew on Tesla's research is unknown. But the timing of the classified seizures and the continued secrecy around portions of his work suggest that someone believed there was something worth protecting. Tesla's reputation has undergone a transformation in recent decades. What was once obscurity has become fascination. Books have been written, documentaries have been produced. His name is now associated with one of the most valuable companies in the world, Tesla Incorporated, an electric vehicle manufacturer founded in 2003. The company's founders chose the name as a tribute to Tesla's work on alternating current motors. It was a symbolic reclamation of a name that had been forgotten. Museums and exhibits dedicated to Tesla have opened in multiple countries. The Tesla Science Center at Wardenclyffe was established on the site of his unfinished tower. Crowdfunding campaigns raised money to preserve the location. Celebrities and engineers publicly advocated for Tesla's legacy to be restored. Slowly, the man who had been erased was being remembered, but the questions remain. Why were his papers seized? Why are portions still classified? Why did the most powerful financial interests of his time refuse to fund technologies that could have changed the world? Why was his name removed from textbooks for decades, only to be quietly restored once the people who had silenced him were long dead? The answers depend on who is asked. Some say it was simple economics. Free energy and wireless power threatened too many established industries. Better to suppress the inventor than dismantle the system. Others say it was a matter of control. Governments and corporations could not allow technologies to exist that they could not regulate, monetize, or weaponize. A few believe that Tesla's work was taken, studied in secret, and implemented in classified programs that the public will never know about. What is certain is that Nikola Tesla invented technologies that reshaped the modern world. And for most of the 20th century, his contributions were erased, minimized, or attributed to others. Not by accident, not by oversight, but by the deliberate actions of powerful individuals and institutions who had more to gain from his silence than from his success. The tower at Wardenclyffe was destroyed, the patents were absorbed, the notebooks were seized, the textbooks were rewritten. And the man who wanted to give the world free energy died alone in a hotel room, feeding pigeons and dreaming of a future that never arrived. Some say Tesla's dream died with him, others believe it was buried carefully and for a reason. This was Hidden Index. Subscribe and uncover more stories the world was never meant to know.